Jake stood in the gleaming corridor of the Zephyrian ship, his hands sweating inside his environmental suit. The blue lights along the walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and the air hummed with alien technology he could barely understand. His girlfriend Zara had been quiet during the entire journey to her home world, her silver skin shimmering with nervous energy. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked, watching Zara's large violet eyes dart around the familiar hallways of her childhood home. "My mother requested to meet you personally," Zara replied, her voice carrying that musical quality that had first captured Jake's heart 3 years ago on the mining station. "She has never asked to meet any of my previous companions." The ship's artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth normal, making Jake feel like he might float away at any moment. Through the transparent walls, he could see the swirling purple clouds of SCIFI-Prime growing larger as they approached the surface. Somewhere down there waited the most powerful woman in the Zephyrian Empire. Empress Lyra commanded a fleet of 10,000 ships and ruled over 40 billion souls across 12 star systems. She had crushed 3 separate rebellions and negotiated peace treaties with species that humans had never even heard of, and now she wanted to have tea with a simple human engineer from the outer colonies. "Tell me again why your mother wants to meet me," Jake said, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. Zara's tentacle-like hair writhed slightly, a sign of her own anxiety. She said she was curious about the human who had captured her daughter's heart so completely. The ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere, and Jake gripped the wall for support. Through the viewing ports, he could see the capital city of New Zenith, rising from the purple landscape like a crystal mountain. Towers of living metal stretched toward the sky, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "There is something else," Zara said quietly. "Something I have not told you about my mother." Jake's stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" "She has the gift of foresight," Zara whispered. "She can see possible futures, fragments of what might come to pass. It is how she has kept our empire safe for so long." The ship touched down with barely a whisper, and Jake felt his legs go weak. A woman who could see the future wanted to meet him personally. Either this was very good news or very bad news, and he had a sinking feeling it was the latter. They walked through corridors filled with other Zephyrians, all of whom stared at Jake with undisguised curiosity. Some whispered behind their hands, and he caught fragments of their musical language. He did not need a translator to know they were talking about him. The throne room doors were 30 feet tall and made of some kind of living crystal that shifted colors as they approached. Guards in flowing robes stepped aside, their faces hidden behind masks that seemed to be made of flowing water. "Remember," Zara whispered urgently, "do not look directly into her eyes until she gives you permission. And whatever you do, do not mention the war." "What war?" Jake started to ask, but the doors were already opening. The throne room was vast, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up into infinity. Floating crystals provided soft lighting, and the walls were covered in murals that moved like living paintings, showing the history of the Zephyrian Empire. And there, sitting on a throne that looked like it had been grown from a single massive pearl, was Empress Lyra. She was tall, even by Zephyrian standards, with skin that shifted between silver and gold like liquid metal. Her hair moved like smoke, and her eyes were the deep purple of a nebula. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "So this is the human who has stolen my daughter's heart." Jake tried to bow, nearly falling over in the lighter gravity. "Your Majesty, it is an honor to meet you." The Empress stood, and Jake realized she was at least 8 feet tall. She descended the steps slowly, her robes flowing around her like water. When she reached him, she circled him slowly, studying him from every angle. "Curious," she murmured. "You are not what I expected." "Mother, please," Zara said, her skin flushing a deeper silver. "Silence, child," the Empress said, but her tone was not unkind. "I am trying to understand how this small creature has managed to accomplish something that the greatest warriors and scholars of our empire could not." "I do not understand," Jake said. Then quickly added, "Your Majesty." The Empress stopped in front of him, and Jake forced himself to keep his eyes down. "You have made my daughter happy," she said simply. Truly happy for the first time in her long life, Jake felt a surge of relief. But it was short-lived. "However," the Empress continued, "there are complications," she gestured, and the air around them shimmered. Suddenly, they were no longer in the throne room, but standing in what looked like a garden, though the plants were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. flowers that sang in harmony, trees with leaves made of crystal, and grass that felt like silk beneath his feet. "I have seen many possible futures," the Empress said, walking among the impossible plants. "In some, you and my daughter live long and happy lives together. In others," she paused, her expression darkening, "in others your love brings war to both our worlds." Jake's blood ran cold. "For how?" "There are those among both humans and Zephyrians who believe the species should not mix," the Empress explained. "They see your relationship as a threat to the purity of our respective races. In the darkest timeline I have seen, your love becomes the spark that ignites a conflict spanning the galaxy." Zara moved closer to Jake, her hand finding his. "Mother, surely we can prevent such a future," perhaps the Empress said. "But it will require sacrifices from all of us." She turned to face Jake directly, and he found himself looking into eyes that seemed to contain entire star systems. "I could forbid this union," she said. "I could have you return to Earth and ensure you never see my daughter again. It would be the safe choice." Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to speak. "But you will not." The Empress smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, she looked almost human. "No, I will not. Do you know why? Because you love your daughter." "That is part of it," she agreed. "But there is another reason. In the futures where you and Zara are together, where you face the challenges ahead as one, humanity and the Zephyrian Empire do not just survive the coming darkness. We thrive." The garden around them began to fade, and they found themselves back in the throne room. The Empress walked back to her throne, but she did not sit. Instead, she stood beside it, looking every inch the ruler of a galactic empire. "There will be trials ahead," she said. "Those who oppose your union will not give up easily. There will be attempts on both your lives, political maneuvering and perhaps even open warfare. But if you can weather these storms together, the bond between our peoples will be stronger than ever." She looked directly at Jake, and he felt the weight of her gaze like a physical thing. "Are you prepared for such a future, young human?" Jake thought about everything he was being asked to give up. His quiet life as an engineer, his dreams of a simple existence, his safety and peace. Then he looked at Zara, at the woman who had brought color and music and wonder into his previously gray existence. "Yes," he said firmly. "I am," the Empress nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing, and more importantly, you have my protection. The resources of the Zephyrian Empire stand behind you both." As they prepared to leave, the Empress took Jake aside. The throne room had emptied, leaving just the three of them alone among the floating crystals and living murals. "Finally alone," the Empress whispered, and Jake felt a chill run down his spine at the ominous words. But then she smiled, and he realized she was not threatening him. She was relieved. For the first time since they had arrived, she could speak freely without the burden of being the Empress. "Take care of her," she said simply. "She is more precious to me than all the stars in the sky." "I will," Jake promised, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. As they walked back through the corridors toward their ship, Zara squeezed his hand. "That went better than I hoped," she said. Jake laughed, surprising himself. "Your mother just told us we might trigger an intergalactic war, and you think that went well." "She could have had you executed," Zara pointed out cheerfully. "Instead, she gave us her blessing and offered the protection of the Empire. Yes, I would say that went very well indeed." Looking back at the Crystal Palace growing smaller behind them, Jake had to admit she had a point. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And with the most powerful woman in the galaxy on their side, their chances were better than he had dared to hope.